The alien laughed at the humans and their pathetic pets, not realizing those dogs and cats would rip off their faces, genitals and feed on their entrails before the day was done. Vincent Clark sat hunched over the bar, his whiskey as cloudy as the memories that still haunted him all these years later. Vincent had been on the front lines for the Earth incident, leading a ragtag group of soldiers and their faithful canine companions in a desperate last stand against the invading Ventaxian forces. It was a story he had tried to forget, but the young Ventaxian sitting next to him, Solaris, was eager to hear the tale of how humanity's furry friends had turned the tide of war. "Are you really want to know what happened?" Vincent asked, his voice gruff and his eyes distant. "It ain't a pretty story, kid. When the Ventaxians first showed up, they thought they had us beat. They were bigger, stronger, and had technology that made our best weapons look like slingshots. They demanded we submit or they'd wipe us out." Vincent took a long swig of his drink, the burn of the alcohol barely registering. "But we didn't roll over, we fought back even though they laughed at us. They thought we were primitive, weak, but they didn't count on the loyalty and ferocity of our pets. When the chips were down and all hope seemed lost, it was our dogs and cats that turned the tide." Solaris leaned in, his green scales glinting in the dim light of the bar. "I've heard stories, but I never believed them. How could mere animals defeat the might of the Ventaxian Empire?" Vincent chuckled, a humorless sound. "That's what they thought too, but they underestimated the bond between humans and our pets. They didn't understand the lengths we'd go to protect each other, and they sure as hell didn't expect Fluffy and Fido to be the ones to tear them apart." Vincent paused again, the weight of the memories heavy on his shoulders. He knew that if he didn't tell this story, if he didn't make Solaris understand the sacrifice and bravery of those who fought in the Earth incident, then their deaths would have been for nothing. The fate of humanity had hung in the balance, and it was up to Vincent to ensure that the truth was never forgotten. Vincent's eyes glistened as he recounted the scene. The Ventaxians came down in their shiny saucers, landing them right smack dab in the middle of our busiest cities. They thought we'd just roll over, seeing their big guns and scary scowls. But we humans don't go down easy. As they marched down the avenues like they owned the place, they came up on the town square, and there, staring them down, was every pup and kitty in the city, standing right alongside their owners. You should have seen the look on those scaly bastards' faces. Vincent slapped his knee, chortling. They pointed their fancy ray guns at the little furballs, thinking it'd be a cakewalk. But then, something wild happened. The dogs and cats, they started growing, stretching up and out until they were eye to eye with the invaders. They sprouted muscles like you wouldn't believe, and their teeth got real long and sharp. The Ventaxians nearly pissed themselves, but they still opened fire. Fat lot of good that did. The critters' hides were tough as tank armor, and they moved so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. Vincent mimed the action with his hands. Those pets, they leapt right into the fray, ripping and tearing at the Ventaxians like they were squeaky toys. It was a hell of a fight, but it didn't last long. The aliens were outnumbered and outclassed. They tucked tail and ran back to their ships, leaving piles of their own dead behind. Solaris cut in, his scales flashing in the low light. "But I don't understand. How did common house pets turn into super soldiers?" A smug grin spread across Vincent's grizzled face. Vincent took a swig of his drink, the ice clinking against the glass as he set it down. He looked off into the distance, as if he could see the past playing out before his eyes. "You see, it wasn't just some fluke or a one-time deal. This was something that had been in the works for years, long before those scaly bastards ever set foot on our planet." He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the bar. "It all started with this scientist, Dr. Eliza Hoffman. Brilliant gal, real smart cookie. She was studying animal DNA, trying to figure out what made them tick. And then, one day, she stumbled onto something big, real big." Vincent's eyes sparkled with excitement as he continued. "Turns out there was this hidden gene in our pet's DNA, just waiting to be unlocked. Hoffman figured out a way to do just that, to flip the switch and turn our furry friends into something more. She worked day and night poring over her research, trying to perfect the formula." He paused, taking another sip of his drink. "And then she did it. She created a serum that could safely activate that dormant gene, giving our pets abilities we never even dreamed of. The government got wind of it pretty quick, and they snatched up her research faster than a dog with a bone. Vincent chuckled at his own joke before continuing. They called it Operation Furry Shield, if you can believe it. Started dosing pets all over the world with the serum, focusing on the ones owned by military folks and first responders. They wanted to create an army, a secret weapon that no one would see coming. He shook his head in amazement. And boy, did it work. Those pets started changing, growing bigger and stronger by the day. They could run faster, jump higher, and their senses were off the charts. But that wasn't even the craziest part. Vincent tapped his temple with his finger. They could talk to their owners up here, telepathically, like some kind of sci-fi movie. It created this bond between them, this connection that went beyond anything we'd ever seen before. They could work together like a well-oiled machine, anticipating each other's every move. He sat back in his chair, a satisfied smile on his face. So when the Ventaxians came knocking, we were ready. We had an army of loyal, fearless companions ready to fight alongside us to defend our home, and that's exactly what they did. Solaris, his eyes wide with wonder, leaned in closer. But what happened after the battle? Did the pets return to normal? Vincent's smile faded, replaced by a look of sadness. Vincent's face darkened as he recounted the grim aftermath. We tried to put them down, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave. The enhanced animals were too quick, too strong, and too damn smart. They'd ambush our patrols, ripping men to shreds before melting back into the shadows. We couldn't even trust our own pets anymore. 1 minute they'd be curled up at your feet, the next they'd be at your throat. He shook his head. The government built walls around the cities, tall and thick, topped with razor wire and gun turrets. They said it was to keep us safe, but we all knew the truth. We were prisoners in our own homes, while the beasts roamed free. Vincent's gaze turned inward as he spoke. Dr. Hoffman worked around the clock, trying to find a way to undo what she'd done. But the original serum had bonded with the animal's DNA, rewriting it in ways we couldn't even begin to understand. Every attempt to reverse the process just made things worse. He sighed heavily. In the end, all we could do was try to survive. The government started breeding the few unenhanced animals that were left, hoping to rebuild what we'd lost. But it was a losing battle. The enhanced packs grew larger and bolder with each passing year, striking deeper into human territory. We were being hunted in our own world. Solaris leaned forward, his voice low. But surely you found a way to fight back. You're still here, after all. Vincent barked a harsh laugh. Fight back? Against those monsters? It was all we could do to hold on to what little we had left. We fortified the walls, sent out heavily armed scavenging parties to gather supplies. But every day, our numbers dwindled. The beasts were relentless, and they were evolving. Each generation was smarter, stronger, more adapted to hunting us down. He drained his glass and signaled for another. In the end, it was a waiting game, waiting to see who would die out first, us or them, and from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look good for the home team. Solaris sat back, his expression troubled, but there must be some hope, some way to turn the tide. If we could just find a weakness, a chink in their armor. Vincent shook his head, a bitter smile twisting his lips. Hope? That's a luxury we can't afford anymore. The only thing that keeps us going is pure, stubborn human spite. We'll keep fighting, keep surviving, until there's nothing left to fight for. And when that day comes, we'll go down swinging just like we always have. He raised his fresh glass in a mocking toast. To the indomitable human spirit, and the folly of playing God. May we live to regret it another day. Solaris watched as Vincent knocked back his drink, a sense of unease settling in his gut like a lead weight. Vincent sighed, his eyes distant as he recounted the government's failed attempts at diplomacy. They thought they could reason with the beasts, but they were wrong, dead wrong. The negotiators, they went in with their fancy suits and briefcases, thinking they could talk their way out of this mess. But the enhanced animals, they didn't see diplomats. They saw dinner. He shook his head, his voice grim. It was a massacre. The animals tore into them like they were made of paper, ripped them apart piece by piece, until there was nothing left but scraps of bloody cloth and bits of bone. The screams, they echoed for miles. It was a message, loud and clear. The animals were in charge now, and we were nothing more than prey. Vincent leaned forward, his elbows on the bar. The government, they realized their mistake pretty quick. They started hunting the animals down, sending out heavily armed squads to track them and take them out. But it was like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. The beasts were too smart, too quick. They'd vanish into the wilderness, only to reappear when you least expected it. His voice grew harder, his eyes flashing with anger. And when they did reappear, it was with a vengeance. They started hitting our cities, tearing through the streets like a hurricane of claws and teeth. They'd rip people apart in broad daylight, leaving the streets running red with blood. It was a war, plain and simple. Us against them, fighting for survival in a world gone mad. Vincent paused, his gaze turning inward. But then something changed. Dr. Hoffman, she made a discovery. Turns out the enhanced animals weren't just breeding with each other. They were breeding with normal animals too. And the offspring, they were different. They had the same abilities as their enhanced parents, but without the aggression, without the need to kill. He looked up at Solaris, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. We called them Neopets. They were the key to ending the war, to finding a way to coexist with the enhanced animals. But it wasn't easy. The enhanced packs, they saw the Neopets as a threat. They hunted them down, tried to wipe them out before they could breed and spread. Vincent's grip tightened on his glass. It was a race against time. We had to find the Neopets, protect them and help them grow their numbers, all while fighting off the enhanced packs and trying to keep our own people alive. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but we didn't have a choice. It was either that or watch our world burn. Solaris leaned in closer, his voice low. But what were the Neopets like? How did they differ from the enhanced animals? Vincent's eyes sparkled as he described the Neopets in greater detail. You should have seen them, Solaris. They were a sight to behold. Picture a lion with the grace and power of a ballerina, or a bear with the speed and agility of a cheetah. That's what the Neopets were like. They had the best of both worlds, the raw strength and instincts of the enhanced animals, tempered by the loyalty and intelligence of our beloved pets. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Dr. Hoffman, she was a genius. She worked with the Neopets day and night, studying their unique physiology and abilities. She created specialized armor for them, lightweight yet tough as nails, that could withstand the claws and teeth of the enhanced animals. And the weapons. Oh, the weapons. She designed them specifically for the Neopets, playing to their strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. Vincent's hand mimed the shape of a gun as he spoke. There were these collars, see? They had built-in comms so the Neopets could coordinate with their human partners, and the collars could also deliver a powerful electric shock, enough to stun an enhanced animal in its tracks. The Neopets, they loved those collars, made them feel like they were part of the team, you know? He sat back, a wistful smile on his face. With the Neopets on our side, we finally had a fighting chance. We started pushing back against the enhanced animals, reclaiming our territory bit by bit. It was a long, hard fight, but we were winning. The Neopets, they were relentless. They'd track the enhanced animals for days, never giving up, never backing down. And when they caught up to them, it was a sight to see. They fought with a ferocity that even the enhanced animals couldn't match. Vincent's smile faded, replaced by a grimace. But the enhanced animals, they weren't going down without a fight. They knew they were losing, and they were desperate. They launched one last attack, a final, all-out assault on Dr. Hoffman's research facility. They wanted to destroy the Neopets, wipe out the technology that created them, and crush our last hope for survival. He shook his head, his eyes distant. It was a bloodbath. The enhanced animals, they threw everything they had at us. They came from all sides, swarming over the walls and crashing through the gates. We fought back with everything we had, but it wasn't enough. We were losing ground and losing it fast. Vincent's voice grew quiet, almost reverent. But then the Neopets arrived. They came charging in like the cavalry of old, their armor gleaming in the sun, their weapons at the ready. They hit the enhanced animals like a tidal wave, smashing through their ranks and driving them back. It was a turning point, a moment of pure, unbridled hope. He looked up at Solaris, his eyes shining with pride. The Neopets, they saved us that day. They fought with a courage and determination that I've never seen before or since. They drove the enhanced animals back, sent them running with their tails between their legs, and when the dust settled and the smoke cleared, the Neopets were still standing tall, ready to fight another day. Solaris leaned forward, his eyes wide with wonder. And what of the Ventaxians? Did they ever return to Earth? Vincent barked a laugh. Return? Those scaly bastards never had the guts to show their faces again. After the beating we gave them, I doubt they'd ever want to mess with Earth or her furry defenders again. Vincent leaned back, a satisfied smile playing across his grizzled features. The Alliance did more than last Solaris. It thrived. With the Zarquin threat neutralized, the Ventaxians and humans became close partners, sharing technology, resources, and knowledge. Earth became a hub of galactic trade and diplomacy, a shining beacon of what could be achieved when two species worked together in harmony. He chuckled, shaking his head. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were some on both sides who were resistant to the idea of an alliance. Old prejudices die hard, and there were those who still saw the Ventaxians as the enemy, no matter how much they claimed to have changed. Vincent's eyes took on a faraway look, as he recalled one particularly tense moment. I remember this one time. We were on a joint mission with a Ventaxian squad, tracking down a group of Zarquin infiltrators who had managed to slip through our net. We had them cornered in this abandoned warehouse, but they were putting up one hell of a fight. His hand tightened around his glass as he spoke. One of the Ventaxians, a young soldier named Zarek, took a hit. It was bad, real bad. He was bleeding out fast, and our medic was pinned down on the other side of the warehouse. I knew if we didn't do something quick, Zarek was going to die. Vincent's voice grew quiet, heavy with emotion. I called over my Neopet partner, a big German shepherd named Max. I told him to run across the warehouse floor and bring the medic back to Zarek no matter what. Max didn't even hesitate. He just took off like a shot, zigzagging between crates and machinery, as the Zarquin fired at him from all sides. He paused, taking a long sip of his drink before continuing. It was the longest 30 seconds of my life, watching Max run that gauntlet. But he made it. He got to the medic and led him back to Zarek, taking out 2 Zarquin infiltrators along the way. Thanks to Max's bravery, Zarek survived, and from that moment on, any doubts the Ventaxians had about the Neopets were gone. They saw them for what they truly were, loyal, courageous allies willing to risk their lives for the greater good. Vincent smiled, a fierce pride shining in his eyes. That's what the Alliance was built on, Solaris. Trust, respect, and a shared commitment to protecting the galaxy from any threat. With the Neopets by our side, there was nothing we couldn't achieve. Solaris leaned forward, captivated by the tale. It's an incredible story, Vincent. The Neopets sound like true heroes. But I have to ask, what became of them after the war? Are they still around today? Vincent shook his head, his eyes darkening. No, the Earth First movement didn't succeed, but they sure as hell tried. They started small, with protests and demonstrations outside the research facilities and embassies. They waved signs and chanted slogans, demanding that the alien invaders leave Earth and take their abominations with them. He took another sip of his drink, his hand tightening around the glass. But when they realized that the government wasn't going to give in to their demands, they escalated. They started planting bombs in the facilities, targeting the labs where the Neopets were being trained and studied. They even tried to assassinate some of the key Ventaxian diplomats, hoping to scare them off. Vincent's voice grew harder, his eyes flashing with anger. But they underestimated the strength of the Alliance and the loyalty of the Neopets. The Neopets, with their enhanced senses and telepathic abilities, were able to sniff out the bombs and warn the authorities before they could detonate. They even managed to foil a few of the assassination attempts, putting themselves in harm's way to protect their Ventaxian allies. He leaned forward, his elbows on the bar, and when the Earth First rebels realized that they couldn't win with bombs and bullets, they tried a different tack. They started spreading propaganda, trying to turn public opinion against the Alliance. They claimed that the Ventaxians were using the Neopets to mind control humans, that they were planning to enslave us all and take over the planet. Vincent snorted, shaking his head. It was a load of bull, of course, but some people bought into it. There were riots in the streets, mobs of angry humans attacking anyone who looked like they might be an alien sympathizer. It was a dark time, Solaris, a time when it seemed like the Alliance might crumble under the weight of fear and hatred. He paused, his gaze turning inward. But then something amazing happened. The Neopets, who had been working tirelessly to keep the peace, decided to take matters into their own hands. They reached out to the leaders of the Earth First movement, using their telepathic abilities to show them the truth about the Alliance and the importance of the work that was being done. Vincent's voice grew softer, almost reverent, and it worked. The leaders of the movement, confronted with the undeniable proof of the Neopets' sentience and goodwill, had a change of heart. They called off the attacks and the propaganda, and even started working with the government to help rebuild the damaged facilities and strengthen the Alliance. He looked up at Solaris, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but slowly, steadily, the tide began to turn. The riots stopped, the propaganda faded away, and the Alliance emerged stronger than ever. The Neopets had saved us again, not just from the Zarquin or the enhanced animals, but from ourselves. Solaris leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide with wonder. That's incredible, Vincent. The Neopets really are something special, aren't they? He drained the last of his drink, setting the empty glass down on the bar with a decisive clink. And that's why, even after all these years, I still come here to this bar, to tell their story to anyone who'll listen. Because the Neopets, and the alliance they helped build, are a testament to the power of unity, of cooperation, and of the unbreakable bond between humans and our furry friends. Solaris nodded, his own glass forgotten on the bar in front of him. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. But Vincent, what about the future? What happens now, with the Alliance and the Neopets and everything else? Vincent met Solaris's gaze, his eyes hard as flint. It was a battle like no other, kid. The Earth First rebels, they were dug in deep, with fortifications and weapons stockpiles that would make a general weep with envy. But we had something they didn't, the Neopets, and the unbreakable bond between them and their human handlers. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. The raid began at dawn, with a coordinated assault from all sides. The Ventaxian ships hovered overhead, raining down covering fire as the ground forces advanced. The Neopets led the charge, their armor gleaming in the early morning light, their weapons at the ready. Vincent's hand clenched into a fist as he spoke. The rebels fought back with everything they had, but they were no match for the Neopets. They tore through the rebel defenses like they were made of paper, their enhanced senses allowing them to detect and neutralize hidden threats before they could strike. He paused, his gaze distant. I was there, you know, right in the thick of it, fighting alongside my Neopet partner, a big Siberian husky named Sasha. She was magnificent, a whirlwind of claws and teeth, taking down rebels left and right. Together we pushed deeper into the base, heading for the command center, where the Earth First leadership was holed up. Vincent's voice grew quieter, more somber. But the rebels, they had one last trick up their sleeve. As we approached the command center, they detonated a series of hidden explosives, bringing down the walls and ceiling around us. I was knocked off my feet, buried under a pile of rubble, unable to move. He closed his eyes, the memory still vivid. I thought I was done for, but then I heard Sasha, her voice in my head, telling me to hold on. She dug me out with her bare paws, her strength enhanced by the Neopet serum, and together we limped towards the command center. Vincent opened his eyes, a fierce light burning within them. We burst through the doors, Sasha taking point, her teeth bared in a snarl. The rebel leaders were there, huddled together like the cowards they were, begging for mercy. But there would be no mercy, not after what they had done. He leaned back in his chair, his voice growing softer. Sasha stood over them, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. She spoke to them, not with words, but with images and emotions, showing them the pain and suffering they had caused. And then, With a single thought, she rendered them unconscious, their minds overwhelmed by the force of her telepathy. Vincent looked up at Solaris, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. With the rebel leaders captured, the rest of the Earth First movement quickly fell apart. The Neopets and their human allies swept through the base, rounding up the remaining rebels and securing the site. The battle was over and the Alliance had prevailed. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper as he recounted the final brutal battle. The rebels fought like cornered rats, their backs against the wall. They unleashed hell on our forces, raining down a storm of stolen tech that cut through our ranks like a scythe. Good men and Neopets fell by the score, their blood staining the sand. Vincent's eyes shone with unshed tears. That's when Max made his move. That brave dog, he didn't hesitate for a second. He launched himself at Stanton, his teeth bared in a snarl. The two of them went down in a tangle of fur and fatigues, wrestling for control of the detonator. Vincent fell silent, his head bowed. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with grief. We won, but the cost. It was almost too much to bear. So many lives lost, human and Neopet alike. And the Alliance, it nearly shattered in the aftermath. Some of the Ventaxians, they wanted nothing more to do with us. They took their Neopets and left, disappearing into the stars. He sighed, his shoulders slumped. Others, like Zorthal, they argued for unity. They believed that we were stronger together, that we could overcome any challenge if we just stuck by each other. But trust, it's a fragile thing. And once it's broken, it's damn hard to put back together. Vincent's gaze turned distant. As for the Neopets that stayed, they became living symbols of everything we'd fought for and everything we'd lost. They walked among us, reminders of the sacrifices that had been made, and the long road ahead. He raised his head, his eyes locking with Solaris's. That's the thing about war, kid. It changes everything and everyone. The Alliance, it survived, but it was never the same. We had to learn to live with the scars, both on our bodies and on our souls. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.